Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Few would argue that in today's world, relationships between people can often be intense, with individuals using relentless tactics to achieve their goals. To some extent, everyone is susceptible to manipulation. But the real question is, how far can it go? A skilled manipulator can completely dominate their target, controlling them like a puppet, stripping them of free will and independent thought. Sometimes their influence is so powerful that they can push someone to commit a serious crime, even taking a life, without ever getting their own hands dirty. The case of Kelsey Berreth was unusual and came dangerously close to remaining unsolved. A young mother disappeared from her home on a holiday under mysterious circumstances. Her remains were never found, and the perpetrator went to great lengths to cover their tracks. If not for the testimony of an accomplice in this disturbing case, detectives might never have uncovered the truth. But what was the cost of obtaining this crucial information? The prosecutor called it a deal with the devil. Kelsey Berreth was born on August 31, 1989, in the small town of Woodland Park, located in Teller County, Colorado. She was the youngest of two children born to Cheryl and Stephen Berreth. Growing up alongside her older brother Clint in their modest family home, Kelsey had a typical small-town upbringing. From an early age, Kelsey was energetic, optimistic, and always on the move. She was involved in sports and had a wide range of interests. In high school, she developed a strong passion for aviation. She was fascinated by flying and dreamed of soaring through the skies. At the time, many dismissed her ambitions as unrealistic, assuming she would eventually choose a more conventional career. However, Kelsey proved them wrong. She was determined, disciplined, and fully committed to making aviation her life's work. After graduating, she pursued formal training and became a certified flight instructor specializing in small aircraft. She worked at a local aviation club, was known as a highly skilled professional, and truly loved what she did. Her job allowed her to travel frequently and meet new people, and those who knew her described her as cheerful, kind-hearted, and friendly, a woman with a bright smile and an even brighter spirit. However, when it came to her personal life, Kelsey struggled to find the right person. In early 2016, she decided to try online dating. Just a few days after creating her profile, she received a message from a young man named Patrick Frazee. They quickly struck up an easygoing conversation, formed a connection, and soon decided to meet in person. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and by the fall of 2016, Kelsey discovered she was expecting. When she shared the news with Patrick, he was thrilled and proposed to her, an offer she gladly accepted. However, despite their engagement and upcoming addition to the family, the couple continued living separately. Kelsey resided in her own cozy home in a central neighborhood of Woodland Park, while Patrick lived on his family's farm outside of town. He ran the farm with his strong-willed mother, Sheila, where they raised horses and donkeys. Patrick had no intention of moving to the city, as he felt obligated to stay and manage the farm alongside his mother. Meanwhile, Kelsey wasn't comfortable with the idea of living under her future mother-in-law's rules and preferred to maintain her independence. Even after the birth of their daughter, whom they named Kay, Kelsey and Patrick remained in separate households. Their relationship resembled more of a long-distance arrangement. They were still engaged and actively planning their wedding, but their living situation remained unchanged. Kelsey hoped Patrick would agree to buy a home of their own, even if it meant staying close to his mother, as long as they could have their own space. While their relationship was far from ideal, Kelsey never complained. She continued to support Patrick, cared for him, and remained committed to their future together. She also maintained a close bond with her parents and brother, keeping them updated on her life. They spoke almost daily, and her parents were actively involved in helping care for their granddaughter. On November 25, 2018, Cheryl Berreth grew increasingly worried. She hadn't been able to reach her daughter for 3 days. The last time they spoke was on November 22nd, Thanksgiving Day. Kelsey had mentioned that she was heading to the store to pick up ingredients for cinnamon rolls and a few other dishes for the holiday meal. She planned to spend the evening with her daughter and fiancé. After that, Cheryl only received a few text messages from Kelsey, but then her phone was turned off. Concerned for her daughter's safety, Cheryl decided to contact the authorities, especially since she was also unable to get in touch with Patrick. Law enforcement responded quickly, arriving at Kelsey's home within 30 minutes. Upon arrival, officers immediately noticed her car parked in the driveway and the front door was unlocked. Neither Kelsey nor her young daughter, Kay, were inside the house. The scene suggested that Kelsey had left in a hurry. Dirty dishes sat in the sink, utensils and stale cinnamon rolls remained on the table, and some food had already spoiled. A few items were scattered around, and her purse, wallet, and phone were missing. At first glance, there were no obvious signs of forced entry, struggle, or aggressive behavior. However, a missing person report was officially filed, and news of Kelsey's disappearance quickly spread across social media and local news outlets. A substantial reward was offered for any information leading to her whereabouts, but despite this, no new leads emerged. The biggest question on everyone's mind was, where were Kelsey and her daughter Kay? Investigators turned their attention to Patrick Frazee, Kelsey's fiancé and the father of her child, visiting his family's farm to speak with him. Surprisingly, that's where Kay had been staying the entire time. Patrick appeared caught off guard by the police visit but cooperated and answered their questions. According to Patrick, he and Kelsey had broken up just days before Thanksgiving, claiming they had grown apart and could no longer see eye to eye. He insisted the split was amicable, and they had agreed to co-parent their daughter. He also stated that Kelsey had given him custody of Kay on Thanksgiving Day, and that the little girl was supposed to stay with him until Monday. Because of this, he hadn't been alarmed by his former fiancé's absence. Patrick claimed that their last interaction had taken place outside. Kelsey had handed over their daughter along with some of her belongings, and they had agreed to meet again on Monday, November 26th. He stated that he hadn't heard from her since. While he said nothing seemed out of the ordinary that day, he noted that Kelsey had been acting anxious and withdrawn in recent weeks. When asked to elaborate, Patrick suggested that Kelsey had been struggling with depression and anxiety for some time. He even implied that she might have chosen to leave on her own accord, mentioning that she owned a firearm, which she had purchased a couple of years prior for personal protection. Investigators later confirmed that Kelsey did, in fact, legally own a firearm, which she kept in a locked box in her home's storage closet. However, during a follow-up search of her house, officers discovered that while the box and some ammunition were still there, the gun itself was missing. While this seemed to support Patrick's claims, authorities were hesitant to jump to conclusions. In an effort to verify his story, Patrick showed detectives his text message conversations with Kelsey to prove that their breakup had been amicable. However, the last message Kelsey had sent him on Thanksgiving morning mentioned her plans to cook dinner and that she was looking forward to seeing him. There was no mention of handing over their daughter for the entire weekend, nor did any of their previous messages suggest a recent separation. Detectives began questioning Patrick's account after speaking with Kelsey's family, friends, and co-workers. To their surprise, no one had heard anything about relationship troubles between Kelsey and Patrick, let alone a breakup. Even more suspiciously, just 2 days before she went missing, Kelsey had been looking at wedding dress catalogs with her mother and cousin, excitedly discussing her upcoming wedding. The night before Thanksgiving, she had even messaged her boss, confirming that she and Patrick would be attending the company's Christmas party together. This meant that Kelsey had been actively planning her wedding up until the last moment. A month before her disappearance, she had even informed her boss that she would be attending the company's Christmas party with her fiancé. None of this aligned with what Patrick had told investigators, but without concrete evidence, authorities had no choice but to release him after questioning. A close friend later came forward with crucial information, revealing that Kelsey and Patrick's relationship had been far from perfect. According to her, Kelsey had recently expressed concerns that Patrick was becoming distant. She suspected he might have rekindled communication with an ex, but despite her suspicions, Kelsey had no intention of ending things. She genuinely believed they could work through their issues and move forward with their wedding plans. News of Kelsey's mysterious disappearance spread rapidly, gaining widespread media attention. Her family and friends were relentless in their search efforts, making public appeals through news outlets and hosting press conferences. However, Patrick remained noticeably absent from these efforts. He gave no interviews, did not participate in any searches, and appeared unconcerned about his fiancée's fate. Determined to find answers, Kelsey's mother, Cheryl, and her brother, Clint, returned to her home for another thorough check. They wanted to see if anything was missing or if there were any unusual details investigators might have overlooked. Cheryl noticed something odd. While the kitchen was messy, the refrigerator had been wiped down, yet streaks remained, something Kelsey would never have left behind. The floor also appeared unusually clean, which didn't fit the overall state of the house. Additionally, the bathroom rug was missing. Concerned by these details, Cheryl and Clint immediately contacted law enforcement, urging them to re-examine the home. This time, forensic experts arrived with luminol and ultraviolet lamps. Their examination revealed a grim reality. Traces of blood had been meticulously cleaned from the kitchen. The amount was significant, leading experienced investigators to conclude that a violent crime had taken place there. Further traces of blood were also found in the bathroom, though in smaller amounts, suggesting that the perpetrator had likely washed up there after the attack. What stood out was the extent of the cleanup. This wasn't a quick attempt to wipe away evidence. Someone had gone to great lengths to scrub every surface using heavy-duty cleaning agents. Investigators even had to pull up sections of the kitchen floor, where they found blood that had seeped into the seams and beneath the flooring. A DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Kelsey. At this point, the grim truth was almost undeniable. She was no longer alive. With the discovery of substantial forensic evidence, authorities officially reclassified the case as a homicide investigation. The next step was to locate Kelsey's remains and identify the individual responsible for the crime. During this time, detectives learned that a security camera had been installed on a neighboring house, with a clear view of Kelsey's driveway and front door. Investigators immediately requested the footage, hoping it would shed light on the events of that day. The recordings exposed major inconsistencies in Patrick's statements. The footage showed that he had visited Kelsey's home twice on the day she disappeared. The first time, he arrived with their daughter, Kay. About 30 minutes later, he was seen leaving, carrying the little girl in his arms before driving away. An hour later, Patrick returned, this time alone. He entered the house and emerged 20 minutes later, carrying something large, which he placed in the trunk of his vehicle. Unfortunately, the surveillance footage was of poor quality, revealing only vague silhouettes. However, it was enough to confirm that Patrick had lied. Kelsey had never handed over their daughter outside, as he had claimed. Instead, he had taken her from inside the house. This raised even more questions. Why had he returned later, and what had he been carrying out? There was still no concrete evidence to charge Patrick, but he remained the primary suspect. Notably, his total time inside Kelsey's home, across both visits, was less than an hour. If he had indeed committed a crime, this would not have been enough time for even a basic cleanup, let alone a thorough one. This led investigators to suspect that he may have had an accomplice. But who? A search was conducted at Patrick's home and the surrounding property, but no evidence was found. However, authorities noted that a new horse barn was under construction on the land, and large sections of soil had been freshly dug. These areas would require a more detailed investigation. Kelsey's phone was turned off the evening after her disappearance, but until then, text messages had continued to be sent from her number to friends and family. Investigators suspected that the person responsible for her disappearance was trying to create the illusion that she was still alive. They decided to track the phone's movements until it was powered down, and this provided a major breakthrough. It turned out that on Thanksgiving Day and the following day, Kelsey's and Patrick's phones had been detected in the same locations. Even more importantly, by the evening of the second day, both phones had pinged in Caldwell, Idaho. But what was Patrick doing there? Detectives soon uncovered a connection. Caldwell was home to a woman named Crystal Lee Kenny, a nurse who had been involved in an on-and-off relationship with Patrick for the past 10 years. When law enforcement visited Crystal, she initially denied any significant relationship with Patrick, claiming she had only met him a few times when she visited his ranch to purchase horses. However, when confronted with phone records and message logs, she admitted that they had been romantically involved, though she struggled to define their exact relationship. Crystal revealed that Patrick had frequently spoken negatively about Kelsey, portraying her as an unfit mother. He claimed that she suffered from mental health issues, used alcohol and banned substances, and displayed aggressive behavior. According to him, he was trying to protect his daughter from Kelsey and was determined to gain full custody. Crystal believed Patrick completely, even though everything he had said about Kelsey was a fabrication. As a professional in the aviation industry, Kelsey was subjected to strict medical examinations, including routine psychiatric evaluations. If she had ever tested positive for alcohol or banned substances, or if a psychiatrist had flagged her as mentally unfit, she would have been grounded immediately. It also became evident that Patrick had an unusual hold over Crystal, manipulating her for his own benefit. Both her mother and ex-husband confirmed this. Crystal would drop everything to come to Patrick's aid. She gave him money, never as a loan, but simply as a gift, and she fulfilled all his demands without question. This level of control had ultimately contributed to the breakdown of her marriage. It was still unclear whether Crystal had played a direct role in the crime or what her exact involvement might have been. Most importantly, the motive behind Kelsey's disappearance remained a mystery. Patrick had not been openly arguing with his fiancée, and according to friends and family, their relationship seemed stable, with wedding preparations actively underway. So, what could have gone wrong? As it turned out, Patrick, who thrived on control and manipulation in relationships, had struggled to dominate Kelsey, an independent and strong-willed woman. She was determined to live life on her own terms, refused to move to his mother's ranch, and never saw eye to eye with his family. Kelsey had a natural leadership quality, something that seemed to infuriate Patrick, who was used to being the one in charge. Investigators also uncovered another potential motive. In August 2018, Patrick had encountered serious financial trouble after investing in the construction of an additional horse barn. He had taken on debt, secured a loan, and was struggling to stay afloat. In September, many of his horses fell ill, resulting in expensive veterinary bills that worsened his financial situation. Around this time, he had persuaded Kelsey to take out a life insurance policy, supposedly to secure their daughter's future. The payout amount was set at nearly $250,000, with Patrick named as the sole beneficiary. This presented a chilling motive. If Kelsey were to disappear, Patrick could easily claim she had taken her own life due to alleged mental health struggles, all while collecting the insurance payout. Despite extensive searches at Patrick's home and ranch, investigators found no trace of Kelsey, no remains, no personal belongings, nothing. The investigation seemed to be at a standstill. With no solid evidence linking Patrick to the crime, authorities decided to take another approach. They turned their attention back to Crystal, hoping to pressure her into revealing what she knew. During questioning, detectives laid out all the evidence they had against her: the phone records, the surveillance footage inconsistencies, and her documented ties to Patrick. They made it clear that if Patrick was convicted, she could be charged as an accomplice, potentially facing a lengthy prison sentence, possibly even life behind bars. After careful consideration, Crystal made a fateful decision. She agreed to cooperate in exchange for a plea deal. In return for testifying and revealing the full, disturbing details of the case, she would face only minimal charges with a significantly reduced sentence. The prosecution would later call this agreement a deal with the devil. But without Crystal's testimony, the case likely would have remained unsolved. Crystal's connection to Patrick went back more than a decade. Throughout the years, they had maintained an on-again, off-again relationship, though it was far from stable. Patrick dictated the terms, deciding when they would be together and when their relationship would end. He used Crystal to serve his own needs, and she, seemingly unable to resist his influence, continued to comply, even when it came at great personal cost. In the months leading up to Kelsey's disappearance, Patrick began portraying her in an extremely negative light, painting her as someone dangerous and unstable. He confided in Crystal that Kelsey needed to be taken care of, and even convinced her to carry out the act herself. Initially, Patrick planned to poison Kelsey. Crystal was supposed to purchase a toxic substance, mix it into Kelsey's coffee, and deliver it to her at work along with lunch. When that plan failed, Patrick devised a new one. This time, he pressured Crystal to break into Kelsey's home and attack her. However, Crystal refused, fearing she wouldn't be able to go through with it. Despite this, Patrick still managed to manipulate her into helping him cover up the crime and dispose of evidence. On Thanksgiving Day, Patrick promised Kelsey they would spend the holiday together with their daughter. They went grocery shopping and then returned to Kelsey's home. While their daughter was asleep upstairs, Patrick suggested that Kelsey put on a blindfold, telling her he had a surprise for her. Trusting him, she agreed. But the moment her vision was obscured, she felt a powerful blow to the head, then another and another. Patrick struck her with a baseball bat with such force that blood splattered across the furniture and walls. Kelsey tried to scream, begged him to stop, but he continued until she was silent. Once it was over, he washed his hands, took his daughter, and drove to his mother's house. On the way, he sent a message to Crystal, instructing her to take care of things. This was the signal she had been waiting for, and she immediately got in her car and drove across state lines. Meanwhile, after dropping off his daughter at his mother's house, Patrick returned to Kelsey's home. He took her purse, personal documents, and firearm, then placed her lifeless body in an opaque plastic container, loaded it into the trunk of his car, and transported it to his ranch, where he hid it in a barn. While doing this, he sent text messages from Kelsey's phone, trying to create the illusion that she was alive so that no one in her circle would become suspicious. Crystal stopped at a store on her way, purchasing cleaning supplies, gloves, brushes, and rags. She entered Kelsey's home through the back door, using the key Patrick had given her, ensuring she remained unnoticed. She spent several hours scrubbing the house, carefully wiping away every trace of blood. However, she had to make it appear as though Kelsey had left in a hurry, leaving things scattered. She executed her task meticulously, but there was one thing she couldn't fully clean: the bathroom rug. Realizing it was beyond salvaging, she simply threw it away. She then exited the house the same way she had entered. After finishing the cleanup, Crystal drove to Patrick's house, where she joined his family for Thanksgiving dinner. Later that night, the two of them moved Kelsey's body into a metal trough, along with her purse and phone. They then doused everything in nearly 4 gallons of gasoline and set it on fire. The gruesome cremation process lasted almost the entire night. Patrick and Crystal continued adding fuel to ensure that nothing remained. By morning, they had reduced everything to ash, which they scattered off a remote cliff. Patrick disposed of the weapons separately. According to Crystal, Patrick's mother, Sheila, had been watching everything unfold from the porch of her house. The fact that she showed no reaction or concern suggested that she was fully aware of what was happening. Investigators needed to question her, determine the extent of her involvement, and hold her accountable if necessary. On December 21, 2018, Patrick was arrested and charged with premeditated homicide. He adamantly denied any wrongdoing, but Crystal's testimony proved to be a critical factor in the case. Gathering evidence and building a solid prosecution took nearly a year, so the trial didn't begin until October 2019. While in custody awaiting trial, Patrick attempted to hire someone to silence Crystal, knowing that without her testimony, his chances of walking free would be significantly higher. However, his plan was exposed, further damaging his legal standing. Ultimately, Patrick was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In addition to the life sentence, he received 3 consecutive terms, each spanning several decades, for solicitation of homicide, destruction of remains, and tampering with evidence. He never revealed what he had done with Kelsey's firearm, and the weapon was never recovered. During the trial, a former girlfriend of Patrick's, Vanessa, took the stand. She described him as a manipulator and someone who exhibited controlling and obsessive behavior toward the women in his life. She also suggested that Crystal had likely fallen under his influence, blindly following his orders as if she were under hypnosis. Thanks to her cooperation agreement with prosecutors, Crystal received a reduced sentence, just 3 years in prison with an additional year of probation. Kelsey's family believed this punishment was far too lenient, but were unable to challenge it. Due to good behavior, Crystal was released on parole in early 2021. As for Sheila, she was also taken into custody, but authorities were unable to prove her involvement. As a result, she was released without charges. Full custody of Kelsey's daughter, Kay, was awarded to her maternal grandparents. Patrick's mother later attempted to gain custody of her granddaughter, but her request was denied. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.